Turning Point USA wants to convince you that the tax rate should be about 1 or 2%. Take a look at this insane argument.
Hi, I'm Grover Norquist. I run Americans for Tax Reform. And in 180 seconds, I'm going to convince you our government should be taking 1 to 2% of our income, not about a third, which is what it's taking right now. Right now, the government takes about a third of our income and spends it on our behalf. That doesn't have to be the case. We started, before we were a nation, at 1 to 2%. That's what we were paying in 1774. The Brits were paying 20%. In London, they were paying 20% taxes. We were paying 1 to 2. We were growing faster. We were richer than the Brits were. That continued for a long time. It spiked during the Civil War. It spiked during World War I. But it was 1 to 2%, 3 to 4%, all the way through that period, and then spiked again in World War II. That's when it didn't come back. The government decided, we have all this lovely money. Why should we ever let the American people have it back just because the war's over? And that's when we got up to 15% at the federal level, and now up to about 20%. Too high. Some politicians are even calling for a 70% tax rate in the United States. We've done that. It didn't work.
But it did work. In fact, we had an effective tax rate of like 93%. Listen, let me go through the history real quick with you guys. Modern economists almost all agree that during the period when the government was taking between 70 to 93% from the rich, I want to clarify that point, was known as the Golden Age. The Golden Age from 1948 to 1973. That's not a feeling, that's a fact. That's just what it's labeled by every economist. You talk to anyone, they're going to say that. That's the Golden Age from 1948 to 1973. And that just so happens to also be the period when the effective tax rate for the rich was 70 to 90%. Not agreeing with that, what this is like calling the Great Depression fake news. On top of that, this guy makes it seem like the government is taking money and not giving it back. That was true during every war, but it's not true after the war. After World War II, FDR passed the New Deal, which led to the Golden Age. The whole point of the New Deal was to give money back to the poor and the middle class, and to lower the amount of income inequality that existed at the time. In fact, when FDR went into office, the tax rate for the first $60,000 after adjusting for inflation was 4%. 4%. Think about that. Your effective tax rate would have been 4%. It's not 70, 90%. That was for the rich. For the rich. You look at Bernie Sanders or AOC, they're talking about slapping a tax. That's 70% for the rich. 50% for Bernie Sanders. I think it should be back to 93%. It led to the Golden Age. Here's an idea. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Wait, if it ain't... Yeah, I did that right. Okay, just checking. When I say, by the way, when I say that the $60,000 is adjusted for inflation, I'm talking about the income, not the tax rate. The tax rate was 4%. It was 4% today, and that's adjusted or non-adjusted, doesn't matter. It was 4% at the time. The tax rate at the time was 4%. That's what I'm trying to say. That's because FDR believed in taxing the rich and giving to the poor. Programs entailed in the New Deal. He even had prepared a new Bill of Rights that would secure Medicare for all, among 7 other amazing policy proposals that would seem far left today. So not only was the government not taking your money after World War II, but the government was giving you more than taking from you at the time, if you were poor or were in the middle class. What Bernie and AOC proposed is a tax on the rich, just like FDR wanted, and just like the tax code that led to the economic golden age for the US. That being said, we do give the government money that we don't get back. We give over $750 billion each year to the Pentagon to be the world police. Let that sink in for a second. The last point I want to make is that this guy makes it seem like the tax rate was 1% to 2% throughout American history. He is right about that, but that's because we had no government programs. Period. You were basically completely on your own. If you didn't have enough food, you would die. Or maybe you could beg your neighbor or go to a church, but you'd probably die because it doesn't matter if you work for a charity. You need to understand that charity is not enough for systemic solutions. And so many people died of hunger, thirst, obvious reasons. If you had a fire, you'd lose your house. If you abused your kid, you'd get away with it. If you stole from a bank, you'd probably get away with it, since local police was not formally created until 1829. We shouldn't want that. We shouldn't want that. We shouldn't want to go back to that. If we did, we'd need to get rid of the military, the police, the FDA, DCS, firefighters, border control, ICE, and so on and so forth. They just go down the list, all these programs, and you ask any of these people, would you want to get rid of any of these programs? They'd be like, oh, no, not that one. No, not that one. That one benefits me. I like that one. Medicare, but firefighters, if my house might burn down, I don't know. Let me put it this way so that right-wingers understand how crazy this guy is. He wants to get rid of ICE. Oh my gosh, no, that's like AOC. He wants to get rid of ICE. That's the logical conclusion. You can't just poof money. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's effectively a tax at that point. It's inflation, which is a tax. Now, I'm cool with that part, to be honest. I'm totally fine with ICE being thrown under the bus and us getting rid of it, along with a bunch of other programs, honestly. Like, maybe we can get rid of like 90% of the military because our military is larger than the next top 10 nations combined. Maybe we don't need to be the world police. Maybe we don't need private prisons that are subsidized by the government, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. You can't fund these without paying taxes. And that leads me to my last point. If you're out there saying taxation is theft, right? You've seen that on like bumper stickers and everything. Then I hope you like getting rid of the military, the police, the firefighters, DCS, and so on. Because it doesn't take an understanding of rocket science to figure out that those institutions are the free things that all like Turning Point USA is trying to refer to. Those are paid by tax dollars. And if you lower the tax rate to 1% to 2%, guess what? You can't afford those. 1 minus 1 has to equal 0. That's the kind of thing that you need to understand, is that if you're not going to tax people, then you got to come up with this money somewhere. And if you're going to just poof money into the air, that causes inflation, which is a tax. It's a tax. And in fact, it's a straight up flat tax. But, it's whatever. These guys don't understand what they're talking about. They don't know. They don't think through. Like, they video edited this thing and everything. It's so sad watching, like, people like this make video content with video editing and everything that looks so fancy, like, and it just be so bad. It's so brazenly bad.